Welcome to lesson 10. For a vanishing point is not just where converging lines meet, it is also where we cease to be, the end of each of our individual journeys. Those are lines from Mark Strand's Meditations on one of Edward Hopper's paintings. I want to use that as a jumping off point today to start bringing everything back together so we can get to our final project of envisioning what was in your head onto a piece of paper. So if we look at these lines, the vanishing point has agency, and journey involves two things. It means moving through space, the body in the world, the body or your imagination, moving through your imagination, but it also means time. So I want us to look at things and how we can have both of those things so we have agency in what we're doing. I've learned so much through drawing. I've said that I've met most of my friends through drawing. I start to understand the world through drawing. So if I see something I say, wow, why do I love that? If I slow down and draw it, I start to figure it out. A lot of it has to do, I've come to think with a certain sense of proportion and a certain sense of balance, and then sometimes when that balance is shifted off. We can think about the golden mean. The golden mean is something that all humans are attracted to, right? It was in the pyramids used it. It was in Greek, it was in the Taj Mahal, it was in the Parthenon, it was in Notre Dame, the UN building uses it. So to look for these underlying structures, what are we attracted to? The other more contemporary thing that we've learned is through fractals, right? This smaller object, and Whitman said this too, every atom belonging to me is good belongs to you. The smaller, the big is broken up into small things. So, and repeated. Let's look at some images here and start to understand how composition can hold all of those ideas of time, moving through space, and have subtext. So this is the Temptation of St. Anthony around 1420. So St. Anthony has two choices, to become a monk or to stay in the world, right? The idea of reason, the mind is geometry, the world is organic shape. Right, so here's the angel has little devil wings. She's got a slit in her dress. But now let's see how he does this. So we get to the vanishing point the vanishing point here is like someone's thinking it out, right? So he moves through this road. There are two paths. He could go this way or he could go this way. This way is more light. We're going to follow this path. We get up to the horizon. We're coming across. We hit two birds. We're here. We're coming back down the path. We pass two trees. We're back in the world. He's back with his decision. Do I go to geometry or do I go to organic form? The other thing start to look for is structure. Start to imagine a grid in front of all of these. This is this beautiful Bruegel entering the Valley of Death. How do we enter the Valley of Death? Through vectors, through this zigzag, right? So we're moving through this, and rather than one point going straight back really quickly, we actually have to labor through all these bodies and all this misery, and then we get back here into the burning world. How we're brought back? Because it's so much lighter here. These are larger, so our eye comes back. This Van Gogh drawing, so let's look at this. This is actually a drawn space, right? The journey is we're moving through time. You could feel walking through this valley. Time is invested in things in many ways. Van Gogh walked a lot. You can feel this person walking. Another Van Gogh, this one, how we get to the distance, this is more of like what I talked about earlier, felt space. It's through actually the touch, the marks, the scale of the marks, the touch. It's not through any drawn lines, right? But we move back. We also understand a horizon. Kiki Smith. So Kiki is someone who I think years from now, the MacArthur Foundation, if they don't step up, will really be embarrassed they never gave her. But let's see, so this is a giant etching, and she's using two ideas. One, this very old idea, almost like the Sacetta. We're moving through this river of potential. Then we're up in this hill, we're back to this woman, so we're constantly here. We're up these trees, and these trees, we start to have these stars, which make an archway for us to enter into what could be her future she's contemplating. And then we jump up here almost into a different kind of space that's much flatter, pushing out. Very different logic, right? Incredible work. Then how time is, so Rubens was an ambassador, so he started to travel on horses. He was going through Europe. He actually started to have this motion, and I think that a lot of that is how he started to come up with this idea of oval. He started to make his space through ovals. So when you look at this oval form, that goes around their linked arms. Then they actually fall within another oval. There's an oval shadow. There's an oval beam of light here. There's another oval here. So we move through space, unlike the Bruegel, which were those diagonal vectors, through ovals, which actually implies a kind of speed. The idea of vectors and repetition, this is a Manet. I've always loved this Manet. Now, Manet is, many consider the beginning of modernism. Modernism because we're starting to actually, instead of being that idea of the vanishing point into some kind of narrative, whether moralistic or whatever you want, of moving back in space, it's actually starting to shift that to right here, right, to be present. Now, I never understood this dark triangle under this divan that she's on. And, so here she is. She's got one high heel on. There's a little way out of this picture up here that you can get through the curtains. But that vector, and then I noticed after watching this upside down for so long that this shape is the same shape as her high heel. This whole shape here is a repetition of this. That's something that de Kooning would follow much later, this idea of taking a form, whether it was just painted, he would rub it and then put it somewhere else, flip it over. We humans are attracted to repetition, usually subconsciously. Okay, so then Cézanne went back to maybe Poussin and older ideas, but like the Renaissance, this grid, everything in the Cézanne will fall on a grid. So that nose lines up right with that toe, right? This is the center of the picture. His belly button's in the center. If you go this way, everything is on the same angle, right? So this arm, everything would fall onto the grid. And then we move back through space. So Cézanne was teetering with that idea of location, putting a mark down and it would locate. So then if we jump from that to Picasso, what was happening in 1906, I don't know. But the same time Picasso was making this painting, Einstein came up with his theories. Ideas about time and space were radically changing. And what Picasso was trying to do here was push actually that vanishing point, rather than going into the distance, put that vanishing point behind your head, like a locomotive coming straight at you. And then just for fun, I gridded this out, and I thought, okay, no way, but it does. Everything falls, again, on these grids, these angles. Everything will locate in a proportion. I don't think Picasso gridded it out. I just think he naturally felt it. Basquiat, I gridded it out. It's amazing how actually this heart becomes the center of the picture. Certain things will fall on the angles. It's more like the Pollock. It's just a natural sense of rhythm. Okay, now we're moving into the idea of time. So how time is invested in a picture is so crucial to having subtext. So whether you want it to feel like it's just a moralistic tale or whether you want it to feel present. But here, so we move through, this is a British way of moving through a picture. You have a space to move into, so we could like put a little rowboat and row in here, move into distance, come back here around. But then there's usually something in the foreground. So here is this little bird, right? So this bird is just touching the water. It's a little hard to see, but you can see the ripples. That is activating the water. So this painting is never just this quiet picture somewhere else. It's always right now. Florence Stettenheimer, another use of time, radical in the 1940s. She also wrote a poem. For a long time, I gave myself to the arrested moment, to the moment of quiet expectation. Then I saw time, noise, color, forcing me to paint in joy, forcing me in to paint them. Look how she actually, again, ovals, but she moves through, it's almost like a diaristic. So you move through, things different happen during the day. So she would have things like first get there, then later in the day, you move through. Again, it was this oval narration, and then usually there would be something in the very center that was the main point. Okay, now let's look at this Romare Beardman. Okay, so this has everything we've been talking about. If you look at it on a grid, everything falls into, like everything makes sense on a grid. So it has that sense of balance, but then things start to become off. So this flattens out. If the whole thing would feel flat, except look at this, the chair that he's on, it creates a space. So all of a sudden we're in this room with them. We move out the door, we come back because of this picture, right? You have these big shape comparing, but then let's look at for the subtext. So you have these people working, you move through this picture, we're out the door, here's the goddamn locomotive, right? Moving through space, right? So you could think of the migration, you can think of many things, but the locomotive moving through action, and where it's moving to is moving to a clock, right? It's moving right into time. And then you have these figures, and then you notice these figures, they're pointing out of the picture, right? So they're pointing, and again, the same way the locomotive is, into a different future. So our vanishing point is there, their vanishing point is this way. In a lot of ways, like Van Gogh would do the same thing. Okay, so now let's think about how we can actually employ that yourself. So I want you to start thinking about, what was your final idea? Like, what was it that you wrote down a long time ago, hopefully, or made a sketch and put it in a drawer? Why is that what you want to see? So start to think about that. Start to think about what are the big forms in it. Think about what, if it has a narrative, what it is. If it doesn't have a narrative, what are, just say, maybe there was a dog in it. Maybe it was just shapes. I could think of the rock garden in Japan, right? I think it's 17 rocks. You can only see 16 or 15, 14, right? You can never see them all at once, right? So you have this desire, this settling of kind of calm, but there's always that little thing that triggers it, that activates it. So if my final project, if I went back in my memory to New York City in 1974, as a student, I had a room in the Fifth Avenue Hotel. And Stevie Wonder had the entire second floor. And through drawing, I became friends with one of the guys in the band, and I finally said, can I come draw you guys practicing? And amazingly, they said yes. So I remember that room. I was never allowed to talk to Mr. Wonder, and I could never record, but I remember it was a small room. I would tell them there was a piano when I first came in. I remember this little beige boombox on the floor that I think they would start by listening to and then play. There was a drum set. You had to get around the drum set. There was a window that looked out onto 9th Street. There was the guitar player. Then there was always Stevie Wonder playing the piano, right? There was the drummer. And so now we're moving into the room. We're in this room. It's a small space, almost like the Beard Room. We're in this room. Here's the window. Here's 9th Street. Here's New York City. We can move out into the world of New York in the 70s, but I want to come back into the room. So how do I do that? They used to let me sit on the piano. God knows why. I could put my drawing here. I could have my hand coming in, and I could actually have a repetition of Stevie Wonder right there, right? This could be me. So our eye would want to move through here, out the window, but I'd come back in here, right? How I make these keys could also move us across and constantly moving through. Okay, find an old painting that you love, draw it. Just draw it. This was an El Greco. This was the El Greco I made like 40 years ago. Make a study of something you're attracted to. Then start drawing the thing you want to do and just sketch it out. And then in the last 2 lessons, we're actually going to pull it all together. Okay. Learn what you're attracted to. Embrace it. Be well, be safe. See you in a couple of days.